Hey, this is Ryan Graham, Community and Council Realty Group of Keller Williams in town Atlanta. I want to talk today about something that you've probably all seen all over the news, all over the internet, and it's about this big lawsuit that just finished up between the National Association of Realtors and many of the larger brokerages in the country. The premise of this lawsuit was that there was collusion, there was violation of antitrust laws, and essentially the entire realtor community, the Association of Realtors in a sense colluded to price fix and control commissions, which overinflated the cost of selling a home and overinflated the cost of, or artificially inflated the cost of purchasing a home. And in fact, the plaintiff in this case did win. And it's going to go under appeal and all that kind of stuff. I'm not really here to talk in detail about the legal aspect of this. I am here to absolutely express my opinion about what all of this means, and also try to provide a little bit of backstory on how we got to where we are today. I've been a realtor for 20 years. I've been a broker for most of that time. I've sold over 2,000 homes throughout my career. I've been around the block, so to speak. And what I feel extremely passionate about in this business is the value that the real estate agents bring to the real estate transaction. If I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't be in business. And if that wasn't a fact, I don't think any of us will be in business for a whole lot longer. But let me just talk about that, I guess, in a little bit of context. And I think first, let's go back in time just a little bit, okay? The basic premise that pricing was fixed and that there was collusion, and it ultimately resulted in sellers having to pay more and buyers sellers having to pay more for the commission and buyers having to pay more for the house. If you go back in history, what you will find, dating all the way back to the 20s and basically up and through the late 80s and early 90s, home sellers would engage real estate agents to list their homes for sale. Nothing different about that today as it was back then. What happened in the early 90s, about 1991, is the concept of buyer's agency started to come about. And so the reason this came about is that oftentimes buyers felt like they were being unrepresented in the transaction or underrepresented in the transaction. And if I can get a little detailed about this, one of the things that is so important with hiring a real estate agent, whether you're a seller or a buyer, you enter into an exclusive brokerage agreement, and what that agreement does is it creates the ability for that agent to represent the client. And in doing so, they give them their advice, they give them their professional guidance throughout the process, they give their strong opinions about certain things. Now, ultimately, it's the client's decision how much to pay, what certain terms are, how to move through the process, but that agent is obviously there using their experience, their expertise, their training, their knowledge, their gut intuition, right, to navigate the real estate transaction. Well, when you had sellers being represented by real estate agents and not buyers, that seller was receiving that level of advice and that level of guidance, but ultimately the buyers were not getting that same level of service. So that's why they started getting real estate agents to represent them. Now, there's the idea of compensation, right? So I guess most of you guys are probably pretty familiar with what I just talked about right there, right? Well, if you go back and you look, you'll see that many homes that were listed and sold, the commissions were 4, 5, 6, 7% back, in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up through the 90s. That was always something that could be negotiated, and it just is what it was. That was the fee. Well, when buyer brokerage came about, what happened is the buyers are not going to be willing to, and I would say, call me and talk to me about this right now, but largely buyers either are not willing to or not able to. Mostly they're not able to write a 1%, 2%, 3% check, to pay for their buyer's agent. They're already having to bring a down payment. They're already having to pay some closing costs. They're going to be paying for moving expenses. There's a lot of costs that go into a real estate transaction. So if you add another, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in real estate commission on top, that would have to literally come out of a buyer's bank account, it's going to make it cost prohibitive for a buyer to be able to hire an agent. So what ended up happening is the listing agent said, well, what we'll do is we'll just take the commission and split it in half. The listing agent will keep half of that commission. The buyer's agent will get half of that commission, right? And so now both parties can be compensated through the transaction. Neither buyer nor seller are literally writing checks to pay for the services of the agents and brokers. It's coming out of the transaction. So it's this detail that I think is getting completely lost in all of this legal. What is being said is that there's an inflation in fees. Sellers didn't have the opportunity to negotiate that, and it's making everybody pay more money. Buyers and sellers are having to pay more money. Well, I mean, the reality is that the buyer is the one who's paying for the house, right? They're bringing that money, most of it usually coming from a lender, but even if it's all cash, they're the ones bringing the money to pay for the house. The seller is going to get that money minus things like commissions and other closing costs and any debt that they have on the property, their mortgage, right? The commission is just a part of the transaction, right? Now, it is up to all parties to certainly negotiate what that commission should be, right? And I think our industry is going to shift slightly in how that conversation is being had. But this idea that there was collusion, right? This was a way for brokers and agents to make more money and to drive costs up and all that kind of stuff, I entirely reject that idea. What this is it's a vehicle for the fee structure to come out of a transaction so that buyers and sellers can have equal, exceptional representation through the transaction. Okay? So there's a lot that goes into all of this. That sort of sets the stage. I have this dry erase board standing next to me for a couple of reasons. I'm going to write some things down. 86%, right? So the National Association of Realtor does some market stats every single year, and this is from 2022. 86% of buyers who purchased a home in America had a real estate agent represent them. That's a very large number, okay? If, in my opinion, buyers didn't consistently feel that the value they were getting from a real estate agent wasn't there, this number would be significantly lower. So I think that's an important talking point. Here's another number I'm going to write down for you. 38%. I should have written down a percentage talking about the number of transactions that are done for sale by owner. It's fairly low. It's about 5% of all transactions are for sale by owner, and there's no buyer's agent or seller's agent on it. I'm going to come back to that. Statistics show over and over and over again that for sale by home properties sell for less money than homes that are listed on the open market. They take longer to sell, and they have less favorable terms for sellers as well as buyers, actually. So why is that important? Well, I mean, it's obvious why that's important, right? If sellers are getting more money in less time and buyers and sellers are getting more favorable terms throughout the deal, then clearly working with real estate brokers is an advantage to the general public, to buyers and to sellers, right? I think that should be fairly obvious. Why would that be? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I think having professional negotiators and business people who understand how to put these deals together and make win-win situations for both sides, that's a big part of it. Also, just look at the marketplace. You know, for sale by owner, at their best, they're getting a sign out in their yard, they're getting some photos together, they're probably sending out some emails, they're maybe posting some ads online, you know, doing things like that. The real estate agents have what's called the multiple listing service, which syndicates out to thousands of syndication partners like Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com and all that kind of stuff, right? And then all the professional expertise that goes through driving more traffic, more visitors to the property, and then the advice that goes into positioning a home for sale and how you can optimize all the results. So bottom line, realtors consistently generate more traffic, they get a higher quality product on the market, they prepare their buyers in a much more meaningful sort of way to be able to put better deals together that ultimately result in higher prices for clients with better terms for both sides of the party. And now I'm gonna get back to this 38%. This is a statistic I recently heard. 38% of real estate transactions that do not involve a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, so there's no agent involved, it's just a buyer and a seller talking to each other, working through the deal. 38% of those deals result in some type of legal intervention that is required to overcome the conflict or the dispute that comes through it. About a third of the time, right, something pretty big happens that causes a legal issue that requires that type of intervention. That's a problem, right? Lawyers are expensive, arbitration is expensive, litigation is expensive, all of that stuff is super, super expensive and painful and stressful. So in addition to all the benefits of working with real estate brokers, avoiding some of the massive pain points that can come with a real estate transaction, hugely important to consider. So I think in closing, I just want to say, I believe very strongly that the value that real estate professionals bring to the industry, to the marketplace, and ultimately to the general public is second to none, honestly. I think that we've been able to drive home values throughout America over the decades. I think we've been able to help people realize the American dream, and I think that we will continue to do that for years to come. Right now is a moment, right? But right now is certainly a moment worth recognizing and taking into consideration. So obviously a lot of moving parts. Those of us at Community and Council Realty Group would love nothing more than to sit down and have a conversation with you about this. Get on the phone, catch up on text late at night. I know you may, or it's likely you're not thinking about buying and selling at all right now, but you may have questions about this. And we've all got crystal balls that we keep back at the office, so we'll share with you what we see in those crystal balls. But seriously, we love talking about this stuff. We love helping people feel at ease, or at least feel that they understand what's going on in the marketplace and how these changes may impact us. But bottom line, we want what you want, right? We want to help you realize the dream of home ownership and how that sets you on a long-term path to financial well-being. But more importantly than all of that, we want you to feel at home. We want to help be part of that process so that, so that you can enjoy your life in your home. So thanks for your time. I know this was a little long-winded, but I appreciate you watching it, and I hope you're doing well. Take care.